Okay, let's mute the music there. That was almost too fun. Let me get my video started. Get my jam going here. And pin my video so I can see myself talking. All right, it is 7 o'clock. It's time for a Java workshop, right? Switch gears and talk about Java and Spring Boot and Java backend systems, not just the Java language, but how to build a backend system, right? Cool. I guess I can get rid of that folder. Hold on. Forgot to clean up a folder on my desktop that apparently is gigantic with a couple node projects. I probably shouldn't have clicked that. It's going to take it 6 hours to delete. Oh, hey, there it goes. It's going. Maybe, maybe. I'll let that do its thing for a minute. Oh, wait. Cool. All right. No idea for clicking on stuff. So let's get a little bit started here, right? So there are 2 ways to accomplish the downloads installs that we want to accomplish for this course, right? If you haven't seen it yet, this is lesson 1, Introduction to Backend Foundations with Java, right? We'll go down here and Spring Framework, right? That's our goodness right there. The Spring Framework. Spring Framework is basically, it's kind of like Node packages with Node, right? It's pre-packages all sorts of stuff to allow us to build richly complex Java applications with relative ease, right? It's framework. It's pretty cool. So there are 2 choices. Our LMS says they're one choice. I'm not going to go against their choice. I think it's great. But there's also a secondary choice. So I'll go through both of them, right? First choice is downloading Spring Tools Suite, right? If we download that, we end up getting a file. Right? And in that zip file is a folder, right? STS-something, right? It's just a folder. There is no installation. It is just raw files. I'm open that up. And that's going to extract and take a second to do that. Right? If anybody's curious, Eclipse doesn't actually install on a system. It's just files in a folder, right? There is no uninstallation for Eclipse. Removing Eclipse just means deleting its program folder, right? It even generally lives in your user directory. So if you go in your user directory, users, oh, not default, okay. You should see an Eclipse folder, right? That is Eclipse kicking in, right? That's the Eclipse folder itself. Right? That folder could be anywhere. Just double click on Eclipse inside of there and it will run. Beard in my mouth. All right, so this is way 1. Install Spring Tools Suite. Right? Spring Tools Suite 4. I think our LMS links to 3. If you go to just the same address, which would be spring.io/tools, Spring Tools 4, slightly newer version, right? There's a big button for download STS. This is the one that I'm running right now. It's this guy. Right? Ask for a workspace, just like Eclipse does. And it'll pop up. Get rid of some of this junk. Right? It'll take a second. Cool. Right? And crazy. This looks pretty familiar. Right? This looks really familiar. This looks like Eclipse. Right? Spring Tool Suite is a great application. It is Eclipse with custom things installed on top of it, right? So if it's Eclipse with custom things installed on top of it, maybe we can just install an Eclipse plugin. And that is actually option 2. That's the one personally I prefer to do. I like having just everything in Eclipse all in one. I don't want to deal with 2 separate applications. We can do this by going to the Help menu and down to Eclipse Marketplace. It's going to take a second to update that. All right, we can kind of manually install this plugin into Eclipse. Takes a second. I can type in STS and search. Hey, Spring Tools 4. That icon looks familiar. Install that jam. Gives us some options. Basically, just want to choose any of the default options it will provide for you. If you've already done all of this installation and already pulled something down, and just keep using it. Just know there's a couple different options, right? Because sometimes having more ways to do things are always beneficial. Because sometimes, for some reason, computers are the way they are, and some things just don't work sometimes. It'd be great if everything worked perfectly all the time, but we kind of generally know that's not the case. And this guy's doing something. He was downloading something down here. Cool. I was going to install this ahead of time, and I was thinking maybe it'd be more beneficial to see it install. We'll see. Maybe watching a progress bar isn't as helpful as I had thought. All right. So while this is installing, let's talk a little bit about what kind of the goal of everything that we're doing here is. I'll pull this to the side so I can watch it. Okay. Spring Tool Suite. Cool. Bam-ba-dam, Postman, right? So another cool utility we're going to need for this course. Postman allows us to make HTTP requests outside of a browser, right? It's pretty easy to install as well. It's a standalone application. I got it installed right here. I pinned it. Cool. Why is this install taking so long? Did this pop up something and I just didn't see it? No, it didn't. It literally is just sitting there. Let's stop it and restart that real quick. All right. We may be using Spring Tool Suite by itself just that I can't get this plugin to install. All right. So Postman. All right. So what we can do is we can start up a simple Spring application. Right? There's actually a sample application that Spring Boot kind of comes with. So I can tell it to do a new import Spring getting started content. I'm just going to download all of the content. And what do we want here? We want a, what was the one we wanted here? Spring REST service. I think that's the template it wanted us to use. REST service. Yeah, REST service. Finish. Right. So we'll kind of get this as a sample application and take a look at it and see what all this thing can do. Yeah, that plugin does not want to install right now. I'm just going to have both of these open. Oh well. Maybe sometime later. All right. So we'll notice that at the bottom right, this thing is chugging on something. It's downloading stuff. My icons and stuff are changing. A web browser that opens up. It's going to give me a help page. And it's thinking about it. I'm going to close this page anyway because I don't need it. Right. Cool. But in general, here's a little basic how to build something. Right. There's an initial project and a complete project. Right? So looking at this initial project, this is a bit larger than what we're traditionally used to. We're typically used to like a source folder with maybe a handful of files in it, maybe a couple packages, right? This looks much more legit. This looks more like an Angular or React type of scale project, right? And it kind of is, right? So one of the key files of a project like this is this file pom.xml, right? Pom.xml is kind of like our package.json for JavaScript, right? This has a list of all of the dependencies that our project needs and all sorts of other information, right? We can add dependencies and plugins into this application by adding in dependencies, right? We'll discuss that a little bit later in the course, kind of manually adding in some dependencies. But for now, at least, this just shows us the things that we've added into our project. Our project does take this and build and pull in things, right? It's the instruction set for our package, just kind of like the package.json file, right? We also have a source main Java file with a hello package that starts in there by default. Close this guy up and look at the complete one because there's more stuff in here, right? We're going to see there's an application.java, right? And this guy should have our static void main, which it does. Here's our static void main, right? This is the entry point of our application. It's importing some stuff from the Spring Framework section and it's saying, hey, run our Spring application, run it. Cool. We also have a greeting Java in here. This looks like some sort of basic class, right? We have a long and a string, an ID and content. We have a constructor. We have a getter and we have two getters. We don't have any setters. The setters are inside of our constructor. So two getters, we can get that content in. We have something funky called a greeting controller. Right? This looks really weird. Right? There's a request mapping and this weird attribute @controller, right? Return new greeting. And this is kind of some funky looking stuff. So let's run this. Right? To run one of these projects, I basically want to get as close as humanly possible to the static void main. Right? Even if I open up my application Java file and right-click on my static void main, I can run as a Java application. My console will spin up and I'll see all this good information down here. This is Spring Boot popping up. I might give a firewall warning. If it does, tell it to allow access. This is saying something, right? So let's take a look at this information it gives me here. Right? Here's a Spring header, right? Some cool old school ASCII art. That's pretty cool. There's also all this output in the console, right? One of the important things to note here is both the name of the application in this directory path up here, application, as well as the name of this hello.application. It's my package and then my class name. Right? When you have multiple projects open, sometimes you might be running the wrong project. So it's important to make sure that you're looking at this configuration and this output and showing what project you're running. I can see some information here. Starting application, right? Tomcat initialized with ports 8080. Some paths, some filtering, some funky things. Tomcat started on port 8080, right? So port 8080 means I should be able to open up a browser window and go to localhost : 8080. What happens if I go to localhost 8080? I get a white label page. This is the generic Spring error page. This pretty much means that my application is up, but I didn't request a valid page or I didn't make a valid request. So what if I go to /greeting? Hey, that's neat. Something happened at /greeting. If I hit it again, I keep on hitting that. That's cool. That's doing something. Right? It's actually receiving that request and doing something with that. So the only file in here that really has any code in it is this greeting controller. And I could see that the name that it gave me was hello world. There's some sort of weird default value here. This is world. Maybe something that looks like the word param, maybe the parameter. So what if I did /Ammon? Will that do anything? No, that won't do anything. Question mark name equals Ammon. Hello, Ammon. Cool. This question mark syntax is a way to pass key value pairs in through a URL. Telling it hit that greeting address, send in a parameter called name equal to Ammon. And I kind of deduced that by looking at this guy. There's something that said /greeting. So I was like, hey, let's poke at /greeting. Something in here, this looks like a method. It looks like it's taking in some sort of parameter. Right, so if the way I have to talk to this thing is through the URL, there's got to be some way to send data to it. Right? So even just by poking at some of these files, we can kind of get a little bit of a gist of how this works. Right? There's some sort of URL endpoint that's listening for commands, and I can send it information, and it gives me back data. Right? That's pretty cool. Actually, really cool. Right? So outside of our application Java, right? Because that's kind of standard with any Java project. Application Java, static void main, boots up our application, right? That's our main entry point. Right? There's really only two other files in here, and this is kind of a standard pattern for a lot of Spring, like REST API type projects. And we have some sort of a model, and we have some sort of a controller that allows us to get to that data. Right? And you can kind of see the naming convention. I have a class called greeting, and then I have a greeting controller that controls how I get access to my greeting class, which is pretty neat. Let's see what else we get in here. What other cool information we got in this project? We imported the getting started. Cool. Cool. Hey, we saw that file in there. We saw that file in there too. We ran it. Did all that same stuff. Got that same thing too. Cool. Cool. Yep, same exact thing. Just like I've read this content before. All right. So what is this thing? Right? What is all this stuff and this technology we're using here? Right? So we're noticing that there's the word tomcat in here. Right? So what is Tomcat? Tomcat is an application made by Apache. Right? Has this great little icon logo type thing. They've had that forever. Right? Apache Tomcat runs like 90% of the internet. Right? It is ridiculous how much runs on Apache Tomcat. It is almost purpose-built to serve out Java servlets. Right? A servlet in Java is an application that runs on a web server, basically. Right? So we have Eclipse and Spring is starting up a Tomcat server, putting our servlet application on top of it, and running it all in one. Right? Our Spring Boot application is kind of a self-enclosed application. It has everything that it needs packaged and ready to go. Right? It just needs to be deployed to a system, ran, boop, it'll run. Right? Once this application spins up, it's its own thing. You can configure the ports it listens on. There's all sorts of crazy configuration for it. You can kind of fine tune it. Right? The other alternative to that is having a system that has the Tomcat web server installed on it that you deploy your application to, and it runs from there. Right? Which is pretty neat. We can even see our version, 8.5.34. Right? I've done some Java development before all of this kind of stuff was prepackaged together. Setting up a local development environment with Tomcat and with all the other stuff you need to get running and serving, and you end up having like 6 web pages open to deploy things going across. It was complicated. right? It was a whole lot of stuff to manage and install. And you had to have all your version numbers lined up, right? So this kind of ecosystem with Spring Boot makes things a whole lot easier. It takes away all the difficulty of setup and configuration and just makes it packaged and runnable for you, which is wicked cool, right? So neat, kind of a basic application there. What else have we got in here? Some tests. I don't worry about tests. I have the same JRE system library. Here's all sorts of prepackaged Java files. Here's Maven Dependencies, right? So what is Maven? I don't think we've seen that word yet. Right? So Maven is what this pom.xml runs, right? That runs through the Maven package management system. Maven is kind of synonymous with our NPM, right? Maven. We can see it's even referenced here a couple times. Maven. Right? So if Maven manages these packages, where does it get them from? Like how does that work? How do we install and find new packages? Check out a site real quick here. Let's look at Maven. Let's ask, hey, search.maven.org. That is not the one I wanted. MVN repository. That's the one I wanted. MVN repository. Maybe I'll look up, I don't know, Spring. Hey, here's Spring Core. October 29th. That was like 7 days ago. Jeez. Here's all sorts of stuff. Spring Framework. Right? Let's see if we can recognize some of these. This artifact has moved. Cool, cool. 512, maybe I want that. Ooh, this looks like maybe part of my pom.xml. Version 512 release, group, dependency. Let's see if we can find that. If that's in our project, that's going to be wicked cool. Dependency, I think it's packaged together in these Spring Boot guys. But here is org Spring Framework Boot. Maybe I should look for the boot one. Right? Here's just the core org Spring Framework. Oh, and you can see some dependencies. Cool. So that kind of same dependency management chain that NPM and all that node stuff kicks in, right? It's not necessarily the most unique idea in the world. It is a novel approach, and other frameworks do the same type of thing, which is pretty fun. So yeah, Maven. Right? We'll notice too that there is in our right-click menu a Maven option. We could say, hey, Maven, update our project. It's going to go in and pull in all of the dependencies and rebuild that project or make sure it has all of the current files for us. Sometimes that's the answer if things go a little bit wonky. Right? Tell it to rebuild your project. Awesome. There's all sorts of good stuff in here. Some of these folders we'll get into more, depending on the type of project too. All right. So let's I'm going to stop this guy from running. I'm going to hit the stop button at the top. Cool. One of the things about, well, I'll cover that one. We're going to make a new project. I'm going to make my first Spring project. I'm going to do a Spring starter project. I'm going to call this Hello World. Right. Hello World. I'm just going to keep everything default there. Right. Press next. I'm going to bring in something called the web on this screen. I'm going to click on web. And then finish. This brings me my Hello World project. I'm going to close the unrelated project, so I only have this one open. Did I say no? Does this not close? Yeah, we'll figure it out. Exit that guy. Maybe that guy's causing us problems. It's building. Oh, no, it's building. Downloading sources and doing something. That's what it was doing. It was building. Cool. So I get Hello World, and it has the word boot next to it. Right? I have some of these other files. I don't have quite near as much as I had my other one. It's a little bit cleaner. But I do get source main Java, com example demo, and hello world application.java. Right? I'm going to start this guy up. First thing I want to do is just run it. Make sure it runs. Run as a Java application. Cool, that's going to continue building for me here. And if I go to localhost 8080, it's going to say white label page error. That's my application. Right? That's my application not doing anything, so I've not configured it to do anything at all. Right? It's just kind of sitting there. So I'm going to make my first file. I'm going to make a new class. I'm going to call this class hello controller. I don't need a static void main. I'm just going to make hello controller. I want to kind of make this like the controller I saw in my other project. So I need to start off with an attribute called @REST_controller. And I need to bring in an import for that. Spring allows us a very robust attribute system with these @REST_controller type things. This allows us to kind of build code and implement the Spring parts in my code as I need to. There's a shortcut for importing stuff. After I type in @REST_controller, I can type in Control+Shift+O. Control+Shift+O. Automatic import. It will fix, it's short for organize imports. So it'll import anything it needs. Control+Shift+O. Cool. So REST controller. Right? Let's do make a GET request. Right? GET mapping. That is /. This is going to be the root of my application @GET mapping. Do public string. Public string. Get hello. Return hello. I need to bring in an import for GET mapping. Control+Shift+O. There it goes. I'm going to save this. I'm going to go to my page. If I go to localhost 8080, it'll say, hey, you didn't do anything. So what I need to do is I need to stop and restart my application. There's a handy stop and play button at the top. Press that. As long as my files are saved, it will stop and rebuild my application. And then hypothetically, if I go to this address, I should see, hello. Cool, I do. That's my text. Right? Cool. That's wicked cool. So I can do a GET request. But I can't necessarily do other types of requests easily in the browser. And those are a lot harder to do in the browser. That's where our Postman application kicks in. So I'm going to pop that guy up. And if I go to localhost :8080 and make a GET request, I get hello. Yeah, that's cool. That's the same text I got. A GET request. Right? GET request. A GET request is a passive request for information. It does not change anything. So what other kind of requests can I make? I can make a post mapping, also to the core address. I'm going to do public string post hello. Return. Oh. I'm going to return post hello. I'm going to return get hello. So I know the difference between these two. I need to import post mapping as well. Post request is an active request. Create something. Send data. create something and send data. So I'm going to restart this. I'm going to always check my console here for any sort of error messages. If I see a lot of lines that looks the same, everything is good. If I don't, things went weird. So that's my GET request. That same address says get hello. If I make a POST request to that same address, I get post hello. So the different verbs being sent to this address give me different responses back. A GET request gets information. A POST request is built to send information. I have two other types of requests. I have @put request, put mapping. Public string, put hello. Return put. I import that. Put is generally an update. Put this data on this system. Right, update this thing. Fourth request is a delete. Delete mapping. I'm going to do public string. Delete hello. Return delete hello. And I import that as well and save it. I need to restart my application. Now I have my 4 major HTTP verbs covered. I have GET, I have POST, I have PUT to the same address. I get put hello. And I have delete to the same address, which gives me delete hello. Right? The naming and structure of these 4 main methods is not coincidental as well. Right? A GET request. Read request, right? Read is kind of synonymous with GET. We kind of harken back to database stuff, right? Create equals post, right? I put update equals put. And as always, delete is straightforward. Delete equals delete. I have 4 basic data operations for working in the database, my CRUD operations. Right? Those line up very nicely to these 4 HTTP verbs for types of requests I can make across the internet. So I can make some sort of endpoint, and I can do all 4 things to my data through that one single endpoint. I can just send it different bits of information. Sending a GET request to here, I would expect to get a list of this type of data. Posting something to this address, I'd expect it to create something for me, like add something to a list. Right? A put request is going to update something in that list, and a delete request is going to remove something from that list. If I can do those 4 things, I have full control over my data. I can do anything I want with it. I can add things, remove things, update things, and get things. Right? These methods are pretty easy to set up inside a Spring Boot. We put them inside something that we call a controller. Right? So what I can also do, we might also see these in different types of words. This GET mapping might also be listed as request mapping. I can do, was it request? Second parameter that isn't there. I can't remember. Might have to actually pull up the portal real quick. Can't off the top of my head remember what that command is. I was going to try and make bonkers. Cool. All right, see if we can find that real quick. Request like cycle verbs. Yeah, there's the verbs we covered. Servlet example. Hey, we just did that too. Ruby. What is there one they have us make here? No, we don't want to make a servlet. We'll skip a little bit around here. Hands-on. Spring MVC, request lifecycle. There's some of that there. Home controller. Ooh, there's a controller. Oh, hey, cool. Get mapping. That does match the lesson. Cool. That's the way I'm matching. If I wanted to give these a much bigger name, I could maybe say hello. Maybe I want to be more explicit with what this name is called. So if I make a GET request to localhost 8080/hello, that's when I get my get hello back. But if I do a post request there, I don't get anything. 405 method not allowed. I can't post to /hello because my post just says /. Right? Post hello. Cool. So Spring and Spring Boot, they're doing complex things, right? They're not doing anything too super crazy. They're just pre-packaging some functionality for us. Right? Getting used to Spring's verbiage does take a little bit of time because it is a little bit different. But once you kind of get used to it, things become a little bit easier. Once you make an application or two, this will be like, oh, hey, yeah, these things make sense. Right? Working with the database table is kind of the same kind of way. You make all of the ways to get into this data. Right? Working from React with Axios or Angular with RxJS. Right? Setting up those requests and make an http.get request, like an axios.delete request. Right? Making all those types of requests map up to these methods that we can build in Spring Boot. Right? This is kind of the missing piece in the middle that bridges our application and our database together and allows us kind of the access point that users can't directly get to or manipulate. So we can put all sorts of stuff, fun stuff like security and data validation. We can protect where our database lives. We can do all sorts of fun stuff with Spring Boot. And the projects in here are pretty fun. You can get pretty clever and creative with Spring Boot. There's some fun things to make. Right? So cool. I was hoping actually that plugin in Eclipse would work. That's my favorite way to do it. But this STS Spring Tools suite works just as well. They're almost literally the exact same thing. One just comes with everything in it. The other way, we install it manually. It just depends on how you want it. Cool. That's kind of my short, brief primer to at least getting installed and set up with Spring Boot and Eclipse with Java, and making and kind of exploring some small applications, seeing what they can do and running them, and kind of seeing some of the stuff in action. Right? I always recommend pulling in sample projects like this, making a small project and just poking at it, seeing what it does. Try to break it. Go into the code and see what you can do. Look at error logs, look at it in the browser, and try to do things with it. Experiment a little bit with these things. Kind of get used to how they work and get used to how they don't work, which is kind of neat. Cool. So kind of another short and sweet workshop. That's been kind of my theme for today. Kind of some getting started things. Let's install some things and play with a little bit of like a brief, like high level 100 overview of the whole thing. And then sky's the limit. Then we can start learning from there. So cool. This is step one. We still got like 90 steps to go. So it's going to be a fun journey. All right. So then I'll leave it open for a couple minutes for any questions, concerns, or comments as always. Again, I'll be uploading this to our workshop channel as soon as the recording is done, which actually might end up being tomorrow. But it's already, like 7:30. So it's already kind of late in the afternoon. Do I have a chat here? I have a chat. So if there's any questions, concerns, or comments, feel free to ask, put it in the chat, unmute your mic, whatever you need to do. I'm here to answer and help out with anything that you need. If not, I think I'm going to call it another small, successful getting started workshop. Cool. All right. So I will see everybody next time, and happy coding.